Hello and welcome back to Vintage Disney here on Brian's Things That Are Cool. As we continue on through Disney's American adventure, we pack up our wagons and head west. Back to the time of the pioneers, when men dressed in buckskins looked across the land ready to stake their claim. Many of these men would be immortalized as America's first folk heroes, and one of the most famous was Daniel Boone. From December of 1960 to March of 1961, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color on ABC brought the story of the famed frontiersman to life with Daniel Boone. Television actor and former husband of singer Peggy Lee, DEWEY Martin, plays the title role throughout the 4-episode series. The series opens with The Warrior's Path, which aired on December 4th, 1960. We meet Daniel as a traveling salesman stops off to tell him about a secret Native American trail that leads right over the mountain to Kentucky. Daniel is notorious for never settling down in one spot and puts together a party of scouts to find the trail. Unfortunately, they run into members of the Shawnee tribe. In reality, this trail, which was known as the Cumberland Gap, was brought to Daniel's attention by an expedition by Dr. Thomas Walker in 1750. An Indian trader named John Findley would tell Daniel about this gap that led to the Warrior's Path, a path that led to the Ohio River. Daniel's expedition told by Disney is fairly close to the truth. Daniel actually started his 2-year expedition on May 1st, 1769. By December, he and his fellow hunters were captured by the Shawnee tribe, who took all their skins and told them never to return. The Shawnees hadn't signed the Stanwix Treaty, which set up new boundary lines in hope of ending frontier violence. The Shawnees considered Kentucky their hunting ground, so Daniel and his men were seen as poachers. As Disney shows, Captain Will, a half-blood, gave the men powder, patch leather, and a small gun, and said, "Now, brothers, go home and stay there. Don't come here anymore, for this is the Indians' hunting ground, and all the animals, skins, and furs are ours. And if you are so foolish as to venture here again, you may be sure that the wasps and yellow jackets will sting you severely." Daniel, however, continued his exploration of Kentucky. He returned there again in the fall of 1772. Disney ends this episode with the birth of James Boone. James was actually born in 1757, not 1760, as this episode implies. The second episode, And Chase the Buffalo, aired on December 11th, 1960. 12 years after our first episode, Daniel and his wife Rebecca now have children to raise and a new farm to maintain. But Daniel wants more and starts thinking about moving west again. James is now played by Kevin Moochie Corcoran, and his real-life brother and sister play Daniel's other children. Before Daniel can even start planning his journey, his family are threatened by unfair taxation. Daniel is forced to sell his farm to pay the taxes and leave for Kentucky. Historically, Daniel was often taken to court for non-payment of debts. He did sell his land, but was to pay off creditors. After his father's death in 1765, Daniel took a group of men to look for land and settle in Florida. Daniel actually purchased land in Pensacola, but his wife refused to move away from friends and family. Instead, they moved to a densely populated area of the Yadkin Valley, while Daniel, of course, continued his hunting trips. Our third episode, The Wilderness Road, aired on March 12, 1961. Now that the Cumberland Gap has been successfully navigated, Daniel and his family and a group of settlers move on to their hopes of a permanent settlement in Kentucky. Unfortunately, the group is attacked by Native American chief Crowfeather, and Daniel's son James is kidnapped. Daniel cancels the whole trip in order to rescue his son from the boys' captors. Typically, Disney chooses a happier ending for this horrific event. Most likely, Chief Crowfeather wasn't involved, as Crowfeather's tribe was in Iowa. That and Crowfeather wasn't born until 1760. Coincidentally, Crowfeather is played by Dean Fredericks, who had a small role in the giant ant film, Them, the movie that introduced Walt to his future King of the Wild Frontier, Fess Parker. In 1773, Daniel, his family, and 50 others set out to establish a settlement. Three tribes, the Delawares, Shawnees, and Cherokees, attacked the party, and in an attempt to send a message to settlers, they kidnapped James and a boy named Henry and tortured and killed them. In the Disney series, James is played by Moochie, who was only 12 at the time. The real James was 16. A slave that was traveling with Daniel's party witnessed the murder and informed Daniel of the circumstances. This attack was one of the first events in Dunmore's War, a battle between Virginia and Native Americans for control of what is now West Virginia. Certainly, Disney wasn't going to include all the bloody details, though they do seem okay with killing innocent creatures.
Dad, come on. You gotta get up.
The death of that shoe is still one of the saddest moments in film history. Our final episode of Daniel Boone, The Promised Land, aired on March 19, 1961. In the concluding episode, the men in Daniel's wagon train are upset when Daniel orders them to lighten their load so they can better navigate the mountains. So, they decide to turn back to North Carolina. A few men stay with Daniel and his family, and they begin the last few miles of their journey to Kentucky. However, our fictional Chief Crowfeather attacks once again, motivated by his personal vendetta against Daniel. Much of this episode is what some might call artistic license. Daniel, of course, did travel the Wilderness Road through the Cumberland Gap and into central Kentucky, but it was a lot harder than shown in the series. Another slave that traveled with the group named Sam settled into camp with the others in Richmond, Kentucky when Indians attacked, killing Sam and his master. After driving off the attackers, the party buried the two men side by side. Daniel would go on to found Boonesburg, Kentucky, was elected as a representative to the Virginia General Assembly, where he took his seat in the state's capital of Richmond, and died on September 26, 1820, with countless other adventures in between that would make this video hours long. An American hero whose true life story is often obscured by legend. Now perhaps Disney's Davy Crockett is a bit more historically accurate, but the exciting exploits on the American frontier will have you on the edge of your seats in Daniel Boone. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at Daniel Boone. If you want to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time.